Well, how are you doing? Okay, this is going to be a video about very obvious globe fraud, globe deception. In recent days, from this video being made, there was a debate between Bev Troy Thinking and Blue Marble Science. Now, Blue Marble Science, his main presentation involved this here, which came from Jesse Kozlowski and Larry Scott, two claimed surveyors on the globe side who I don't know are even around anymore. But either way, it's claimed that they measured diverging zeniths, right? Now, I'm going to show here how all three of these guys, Jesse Kozlowski, Larry Scott, and Blue Marble Science, are all three of these people are frauds with evidence. Okay, so there's no ignorance involved here. This is purely fraud. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here on this page that would confuse people, a lot of nonsense on this page. But the only things that actually matter are here. Not 910955, but 10955. That is the giveaway. Okay? Because, and on top of that, the XYZ here, coordinates on either side. See, the claim here is that there is diverging zeniths after being measured, right? But XYZ coordinates or XY coordinates require parallel zeniths. They can't work without parallel zeniths. So the ECEF system that is claimed to be a sphere is only mathematical after the measurements. There is no diverging zeniths, as if there was, XY and XYZ would be an impossibility. There would be no Cartesian. Cartesian requires that all the dimensions, the dimensions of all the squares of the two of the x and y grid, and all the cubes of the XYZ grid are all exactly equal in dimension to each other, and that they fit up against each other and corner to corner, edge to edge, side to side perfectly, and there is no deviation in their dimensions and no warping. Whereas if you try and have that same system with diverging zeniths, because the zenith through each square of the xy or each cube of the xyz grid will, if they are diverging, then all the dimensions of the squares in the xy and the cubes in the xyz will be wrong, so you can't use it. It's unusable. So the fact that they're using xyz coordinates for both of these, as well as they have the latitude and longitude up there, but the xyz requires parallel zeniths. So this alone is a debunk. But I don't want to just stop at that, because people can hand wave that away if they want, even though it's not possible in reality. But people who want to keep believing that these three people, Kozlowski, Scott, and Blue Marble, are somewhat valid, they're not. The three of them are frauds, and they knew what they were doing. Kozlowski and Scott knew what they were doing when they put this out, and Blue Marble knew what he was doing when he tried to use it in a debate. The debate was, is horizontal and level the same thing? That's the basics of the debate between him and Bev, right? And they are the same thing. But people like Blue Marble Science are trying to claim that zeniths diverge and level, all points along the level are equal with the center of a sphere, right? This is what he's trying to claim, right? It's total nonsense, but either way. But the 1.0955 here, right? This is the giveaway. I'll show you why. Because before Blue Marble presented this in the debate, now I'm going to, just so you know, I'm going to share the debate in the description of the link for the debate in the description of this video. But before Blue Marble presented this page, he presented this, right? And why did he present that, right? This is the giveaway. See, the claim is that there's diverging zeniths, and that they measured here, that they measured off at our zeniths, right? And they ended up with more than 180, something that would be impossible with parallel zeniths. You will always get 180 with parallel zeniths, but with diverging zeniths, you can get more than 180 when you add up the accumulation. So here, look what he has. He has a distance in feet between Larry Scott, which is here, and Jesse Kozlowski, which is up here, right? So Kozlowski was on a rise, and Larry Scott, the distance between Larry Scott and the horizontal distance between Larry Scott and Kozlowski is 58,481 feet. The elevation of Kozlowski above that horizontal is 1,118 feet, right? And of course, because this hypotenuse line is a hypotenuse line, it's going to be slightly more than the adjacent. It's 58,492 feet. But that don't matter. All that matters is this horizontal, 58,481, and this elevation here above the horizontal of 1,118, right? They're all that matters. You see, what they did is they switched around how it's done in reality. That's what they did. So they tried to make it seem like Larry Scott measured some kind of a zenith angle off of his vertical, right? And the same with Kozlowski. But that's not what was done. So this here is a switcheroo. There was no 91.0955. There wasn't a 91.0955. There was no 88, 57, 58.2. This is what there was. Just give me a second. Let's go to here, right? Here you can see, this is important before we go further. Here you can see that on the globe, right, this is their model. It's an orthographic model. There is no angular size change taken into account. That does not happen. There is no perspective effects of any kind, visual occultation, optical drop, anything that's perspective effect is omitted because everything is orthographic, so perspective cannot come into it. So all the maths for a sphere art are all orthographic maths. So what you have here is like you have, let's say, the height of the camera, you have where the horizon would be, you have the hidden amount, and then the visible amount. What you will notice is that from the bottom here to the top here, this is the full size of the object. It doesn't change in angular size, right? But, so it's all calculated on the amount you can see of an object is all calculated from a distance within their model, is all calculated on or your angle to it, which is something that can't exist on the globe model because angles, which I'm going to show in a minute, which Metabunk show and prove, angles require horizontal baselines. So you can't have an angle off a curved surface. But what you have is the actual size of the object never changes, right? Whereas in reality, there is an angular size change, a perspective size change in reality. But in orthographic globe maths, there is no size change, no angular size change, no actual size change. It stays exactly the same size at all times. The only thing that is claimed to change is the observer's view of the actual size of the object. But the size doesn't change. There is no angular size change. Angles can't exist within their model. They can't use angles because they have a curved surface. So there is no adjacent. The best they can do is make up nonsense about tangent planes, which has nothing to do, which doesn't prove anything for them here, which I'm going to show. So, of course, here is the viewer. They have their zenith and the nadir, which goes to the center of their globe, and the zenith here, which goes in, becomes a nadir, and here goes to the center of the globe. So you're going to have a divergence in zeniths within this process. So if we come up here, the distance was 11.2 miles, right? Viewer height in feet, I put in Kozlowski, right? 1,118 feet, right? Now, all this here doesn't matter, right? This is all globe carry on. Doesn't mean anything, any of this, right? But when we come down here, right, pure angular size results, right? This is where Metabunk must change what they do. So the angle between eye level and the horizon for Kozlowski, which would be his horizon if the horizon was in the position it would be over a horizontal plane, is 0.59257, right? But that's not important, right? What's important here is that angle between eye level and the bottom of the target, 1.16410 degrees. That's important, right? Because when it gets to this, right, when it gets to this point, Metabone can no longer use that. They can't use that anymore. What they need to do is switch to a flat earth, a flat plane, a horizontal. That's what they need to switch to. So to get the angle between the eye line, the eye level of the person that's 1,100 feet up in the air, they need to use a horizontal plane to get the angle to the bottom of the target, which is 11.2 miles away, right? Now, in their maths, even the horizon here is, even within their maths, their geometric horizon is well beyond the target, as the horizon is for almost 41 miles away, well beyond the target. So the distance in miles between Kozlowski, even within their model, and Scott won't make any difference because it's not where the horizon is. So they must use a flat plane to do this part. They have no way out of it. And I'm going to show you why 1.16410 is so important in a minute. I'm going to prove how they're such frauds. Angular size, right? 58,481. That's the horizontal distance in feet between Larry Scott and Jesse Kozlowski, right? So using parallel zeniths, right? Not diverging zeniths, parallel zeniths. There is that amount of distance between the both of them, right? There is an elevation of Kozlowski of 1,118 feet above the elevation of, or the let's say above the elevation of Larry Scott. Now, when we calculate what, let's just say if Larry Scott was looking at something, right, at a distance of something that was 1,118 feet high, above his feet, using his feet as the horizontal, and its distance is 58,481 feet. That would give us a 1.0953 degrees, right? If we go back a second, right, 1.0955, right? So what they're actually after doing is they're after switching things around. All that actually happened was Larry Scott, right? Now, I don't think any of this happened. It's all calculations, right? But if it was done in reality, Larry Scott would take a 1.0955 degree angular size measurement of the position of the rise above his feet of where Jesse Kozlowski is, which is 1,118 feet high, and the distance between them is 58,481, right? So that would have ended up with Larry Scott having made a 1.0955 angular size measurement, which is why Blue Marble had to show this, right? Parallel zeniths, he had to show a horizontal baseline, and he had to show, right, an angle. So you have the adjacent, which is always a horizontal. You have the opposite, which is always a parallel to the observer's zenith, and you have the hypotenuse. So that's an angular size measurement he took, right? That was, if any of this ever happened, it would be Larry Scott measuring an angular size between his feet, between the horizontal from his feet and the position of Jesse Kozlowski. That with Jesse Kozlowski 58,481 feet away. Right? That's what would actually happen in reality. And to support this, I am going to go to the maths. So Metabone claimed that there would be an angle between Kozlowski and Scott of 1.16410, right, degrees, right? 1.16410 minus 1.0955 is 0.0686. 90 minus 1.0955 is 88,9045. 90 minus 1.16410 is 8359. So if we add both of those together, we get 177,7404. Sorry, 7404. So 177,7404 plus 1.16410 plus 1.0955 is 180. So this is a pure back calculation from 1.0955 angular size measurement that would be taken by Larry Scott. And the angle between Kozlowski and Larry Scott would have been measured at 1.16410. That's what would have happened. In reality, that's what would have happened. But what they did is they tried to back engineer it, right, into this. And they did it by first needing the angular size measurement. Now remember I told you that within the globe model, there is no angular size. Everything is its actual size. There is no angular size, there is no perspective. There is no perspective possible within our maths. So the fact that angular size exists debunks any claims of it being a globe. It's actually that simple. But obviously these people are not going to bow down to that because they don't bow down to anything, regardless of whatever proof they're given. But it doesn't matter. The point is that no perspective can exist within our model, right? Sorry, but Metabunk needs to use a horizontal plane and needs to use and take perspective measurements, right, to add in this pure angular size results. What's interesting is they have angular size of hidden amount. They give this angular size of hidden amount, but it's what's the point of that? It's completely pointless because angular size, there is no hidden amount because angular size doesn't exist on our globe. There's no amount hidden. There's just an angular size, but they're only given an angular size of this hidden amount, which means absolutely nothing. But the reason they're doing that is because they can't take in an angular size for the full size of the object, because then it would be, because if they gave the angular size for the full size of the object, the angular size would be 1.0955 degrees, which would be across a horizontal plane, completely debunking that they're doing anything on the globe. And this is the rub, but it's also the destruction of Jesse Kozlowski, Larry Scott, and Blue Marble Science, because it's proof that what they're claiming is absolutely impossible. You can't have that. That is not reality. Zeniths do not diverge. Zeniths can only be parallel. To prove this more, see, technically, before I go on, technically, right, what Blue Marble Science claimed, right, by claiming that, and Larry Scott and Jesse Kozlowski, technically all three of them are claiming that celestial navigation doesn't exist, that a huge amount of surveying is impossible and doesn't exist, and air travel doesn't exist. Now, Blue Marble Science is a supposed commercial pilot, so he should be able to back up his claims of diverging zeniths with pitch data, shouldn't he, from his airplane. He should be able to back this up. He should be able to come up with some official pitch data from some long-haul flights and prove it, that there is these diverging zeniths, because zeniths have to be parallel, right, or in reality, but he's claiming they're divergent. So he is a commercial pilot, but yet his claim means that airplanes can't exist. It's just ridiculous. This is what's going on with these people. So he's completely contradicting the fact that he has a supposed commercial pilot's license, because his commercial pilot's license couldn't exist. It couldn't, because airplanes couldn't exist within the claim of divergent zenith. But just to go on, this is the only way, right? They must get an angular size to, let's say, the lighthouse from the ship, right? And then once they have that, they can back calculate it with the center of a pre-assumed sphere with a pre-assumed radius. That's what they do. That's how they make this happen. Here is, right, two plumb bobs, and here is theodolite, right? Here is the horizontal plane, right? The azimuth plane, right? That is the only way you could measure diverging zeniths. There is no other way to measure divergent zeniths. This is the only way, and you would have maybe a 200-foot between the theodolite and plumb bob A and theodolite on plumb bob B. So you'd have 200 feet between the two plumb bobs and 200 feet between the theodolite and each plumb bob. And that's the only way you could measure diverging zeniths. And would you be able to measure that? No. There is no way to prove that zeniths diverge other than doing it that way. And that's why, and they know that this is impossible. They know they can't do this, which is why they have to, do this nonsense. If it was possible, they wouldn't have to do this nonsense. But this is the nonsense they have to do, which is a switching around. They're switching these around. None of this happened. Only a 1.0955 angular size measurement happened. That is all that happened, right? If anything happened, and maybe a 1.16410 depression angle, right? Maybe, right? But the point is that, right, this nonsense here and their claim of diverging zeniths didn't happen. None of this happened. X, Y, Z coordinates alone make it impossible. But just to carry on, just to show how ridiculous this is, here's another one, right? The azimuth plane. That's the only way they'd be able to measure diverging zeniths, and they know they can't, so they didn't do it that way because it can't be done because they don't exist. Only parallel zeniths exist. Here is the basics of how you have to measure above and below the horizontal. There it is. You have plus and minus. That's how you have to do it. Here is how you would. There's your depression angle. Has to be a straight horizontal line out from the lens, and your angle down to the base, which would be the base of this rock, let's just say, and that is your angle here. And here, this is how you get a height. So you would maybe even mark on this what the exact, you put a mark here, even if you wanted, if it was close, to mark the exact height of your theodolite, and or something like that. And then you'd use the distance and the angle height here from here to here, and then the angle here from here to here, and you'd add them together with the distance, and you'd work out its size via its angular height or its angular size. So you work out its actual size, blah blah blah. So using the distance and the angle. So we move on. Same again. What you would do here, there is the height of the, using a 90. You need to use the 90. You use that height of the lighthouse here, and you take your angle, but then you must correct the angle, the vertex, down. You must correct it down for it to be a correct angular size measurement. So you must use a horizontal plane, and you must use a right angle for an angular size measurement. There's no way around it. Angular size measurements require right angle triangles. Okay, now we get to rise over run. This can't exist within Blue Marble Science's claim. Kozlowski and Scott are also claiming that rise over run can't exist, right? So here you have a way of measuring slope, right? Elevation and slope. And so you have rise, which is the vertical, and run, which is the horizontal. So it's all verticals and horizontals, vertical and horizontal. So here it is. All those, to do this is differential leveling, also using the rise over run method. All of these verticals have to be parallel. They can't not be parallel. They must be parallel for this to work. So this has to be parallel with this, right? So when they move the theodolite to here, then this must be parallel with this, and so on and so on and so on. And if they did this along a long roadway, could go on for miles and miles and miles, then every one of those zeniths must be parallel. There is no way around it. But according to Blue Marble Science, Jesse Kozlowski and Larry Scott, right, all those zeniths have to be diverging, making this process completely impossible. Same again here, direction of leveling. As you can see, look, all of these zeniths, all of these verticals must be parallel, because this process can't work without perpendicular. It's impossible. You need perpendicular for this process to happen. This process is used all the time in the world, yet these people are claiming this doesn't exist. Here we are, right, the first half of it. So for a slope, you have a vertical and a horizontal. And your second half, then you have the horizontal underneath and the vertical up. So this determines your slope. right? This can't exist within their claim because the zeniths have to be parallel. So XYZ coordinates can't exist, rise over run can't exist, differential leveling can't exist, celestial navigation can't exist, air travel, airplanes can't exist. None of these things can exist within the claim of diverging zeniths. So Blue Marble Science, Jesse Kozlowski, and Larry Scott are all claiming that airplanes don't exist and air travel, that celestial navigation doesn't exist, that rise over run does not exist, that differential leveling does not exist, and the acquisition of slope within surveying does not and cannot exist. That's their claim. So just to show right here. So here is the, let's say this is the actual size of a mountain, right? But for the observer, they're going to see the angular size. So they're not going to see the actual size at a distance. They're going to see the angular size. And this is what, right? This is, so what, I'm just going to show us up a second, right? This is what happened between Kozlowski and Larry Scott if they did what they claimed to do. Larry Scott is here, measured a 1.0955 degree angular size to this mountain, and Kozlowski measured a 1.16410 depression angle or dip angle to Scott. That's what would have happened in reality, but they tried to get smart about it, and once they had the 1.0955 angular size measurement of the mountain, they then could, after that, they could back calculate it and switch things around to make it a globe. That's all it is. It's pure switcheroo to create this type of a situation. But there is actually, see, through the whole debate, all the Blue Marble Science was doing was the hijacking of perspective, because that's all these people ever do. And he denied that horizontal and level are the same thing. Yet Metabunk, they don't deny it because they show it. They show how they need to use horizontal and level to get their angular size results. If we just go back here, there we are. Look, they have no choice but to use horizontal plane for that. So horizontal and level have to be the same. There is no way around it. So angle between eye level and the horizon. That means what's the eye level, right, and the horizon, right? This is Kozlowski's, this green here, that's his eye level. That's a horizontal, right? Eye level and horizon. So that would be the dip angle to the horizon requires a horizontal, which is also known as a level, the level, horizontal and level. So these are horizontals, levels, and you cannot do a dip angle without, right, from your eye line, you can't do a dip angle to anything below your eye line without the level line, the horizontal line. So this Metabunk absolutely proved that what Bev Troy Thinking was saying is 100%, 1,000,000 billion % correct, and that Blue Marble Science is a total fraud. A total fraud. But we already knew that. But I just like to really make sure that everyone knows that. So there was one other thing, because as I said, his whole debate, for the whole debate, Blue Marble Science was just trying to hijack perspective, because that's all he's got. He's got nothing else. So there was one other thing, and I just feel the need to add this in because he's such a loser. I feel the need to add this in, right? Because he deserves it. He deserves a lot more than this, negatively. A lot more negative press than this. Because what he did was he showed this first, which is like the headline of a newspaper. Nathan often talks about this. It showed the headline first. It's like, get this out of the way first. And then this is like what's written underneath the headline. So they show the headline, which is the giveaway. They always have to give themselves away, right? But then they go quickly switch to the writing underneath and tell you a load of lies. But this is the headline. But besides that, there was one other thing, and he was hanging on to this and such nonsense. But I just said I'd just wipe this out while I was in it. While I was at it, I'll wipe this out there. So this nonsense here about the level of the theodolites and looking at Blackpool Tower and blah blah blah, and they claim that Bev's theodolite or whatever, or whoever had it, or sorry, not theodolite, but auto level, was up this far up the tower, and that's gone over the curve of the globe. It's more complete BS, right? And this is just more hijacking of perspective. So I just show here. This is what's known as visual occultation. Shown this many times, but people like Blue Marble Science, who are frauds and liars, have to ignore perspective because they support the globe model. So you see, not going over the curve of a globe, just perspective effect, right? So if you move that to here, move it to there, the angle to the top of that is going to be different than when it's there. You won't see it at all when it's there. But according to them, that coffee pot, whatever it is now gone over the curve of the globe, according to them. Because that's what crazy people have to say. I think that's it. One last final, just to really rub it in, and just to really put a cap on this. What is claimed to have actually happened, that Larry Scott measured a 1.4 degree elevation angle, that Jesse Kozlowski measured a 1.09 degree depression angle, right? Which means that when compared with their zeniths, it would mean that they would have measured greater than 180 degrees collectively. Larry Scott, 88, 57, 58.2, Kozlowski, 91, 09, 55.0. But what really happened was different. What really happened was Larry Scott measured the vertical angular size between his elevation and Kozlowski's elevation, which is 1.0955 degrees, using the horizontal distance between them both of 11.2 miles as his baseline, and then they back engineered the globe model and diverging zeniths from this elevation angle supposedly taken by Larry Scott by reversing the process. I meant to put in there the angular size measurement, not elevation. Same, it is. I meant to put in angular size instead of elevation angle. The globe model is an orthographic model. Sorry, the globe model is an orthographic model, so it foregoes and hijacks perspective, i.e., angular sizes, optical drop, visual occultation, etc. And this is a prime example of that hijacking by these two claims surveyors and Blue Marble Science, proving without a doubt that their claims concerning divergent zeniths are and have to be absolutely fraudulent. Larry Scott measured a 1.09 degree angular size between his feet and the rise that Kozlowski was stood upon via the horizontal distance separating the both of them. Kozlowski measured a dip angle to Larry Scott's feet from his rise of 1.16410 degrees. Completely debunking their claims. That's what actually happened. Metabunk support exactly what I said. Metabunk supports Bev-Troy thinking. Metabunk supports reality. Right? When they address their angular sizes, something that can't exist on a globe, and there is the proof of it. So the angle between eye level and the horizon, right? How did they get that angle? Then the eye level needs to be a horizontal angle between eye level and the bottom of the target, right? Eye level and the bottom of the target is 1.164010 degrees. What's the eye level? That has to be a horizontal, because you need to use 90 degrees perpendicular to take that angle. So eye level, the word level, right, is a horizontal. So Metabunk in both of these instances are referring to level, but also horizontal. So Metabunk are claiming level and horizontal are the same thing, completely validating what Bev-Troy thinking has been saying for several years, and obviously validating my video. And that's the end of that. Thanks for watching.